Welcome to Glenmore Lodge's Winter Mountain, the Art of Anticipation. In the uncontrolled environment of the winter mountains, we often have to react to a variety of hazards and associated risks. The situations we are faced with can often be complex. This has the potential to make us more susceptible to certain heuristic traps or cognitive bias. In order to simplify our surroundings and therefore help us make good decisions, it's important for us to develop our anticipation skills. This helps us to avoid situations for which we're not skilled or experienced enough to deal well with their complexity. Let's start this lecture with a story from one of your mates who's had the most amazing day out. He comes in and he's buzzing, had the best day out, doing so good. It was blue skies, we've got the most amazing views, and we did this incredible route, you had to go and do it. We headed up onto CMD, onto Cairngorms, and you know what, we were going to head along the arete and up onto Ben Nevis, and we were a bit nervous about it because, you know what, people say it's pretty exposed, pretty scary, but do you know what, it was absolutely fine. You'll be fine. It was really easy compared to what I thought. And we headed up onto Ben Nevis and we wanted more. I thought, right, I heard people have descended ledge route, let's go down there. And do you know what, pretty intimidating at the top, but as soon as you're over the edge, it's just taking it bit by bit. And do you know what, it was actually pretty straightforward. There was one narrow bit, but it was easy enough, you'll be fine. And we dropped down and through past number 5 gully and down towards the CIC hut. So good, really good route, you have to go do it, so good. Now, your mate's just told you that wonderful story, but I'm sure from your avalanche education, you're suddenly thinking, I've just been served up a massive commitment trap. And you can't get this idea out of your head and you want to go and have the same experience as your buddy. In the real world, this kind of experience happens regularly and to some extent is unavoidable. So how can we take a situation like this and ensure we can make good decisions and are not led down a path of no return? We've met this model in the avalanche lecture, but we can apply its structure in a more broad context. For example, let's consider how mountain hazards can be influenced by conditions, human factors and terrain. We can influence some of these factors in the planning phase, we can adjust our plan to the changing picture of our journey, and we can make key decisions in specific places during the day around mountain hazard. Let's home in on the planning phase. How can we anticipate the challenges we're likely to face? Well, let's start with weather and conditions. Weather is powerful. It has a large influence over our time in the mountains. Modern technology provides us with huge amounts of useful weather and conditions information. What hazards can the weather influence? You can't influence the weather, so try and let the weather and conditions influence your planning of the day. You and your team. We can anticipate loads of factors that could affect us and our team. It's worth spending time in the planning phase to ask the following questions of you and your team. This will help you plan around certain challenges, not getting caught out in the moment by a surprise. Ask yourself, does your fitness levels match with the plan? Have we the skills to move efficiently in the anticipated terrain? Have we the experience to relate to the expected conditions? What are our motivations for today? Is anyone unwell or carrying injuries? Do we all have ownership over this plan? It can be really hard to determine the expected hazards from a map. So a quick Google Images search may give you an idea of key sections of your journey and what they may look like in a variety of conditions, from lean through to heavy snow. This will affect the hazards that you're expecting, from cornicing through to trip and slip hazards and icy conditions, long runouts, etc., that you might be expected to see.
So where else can I get some more information about my expected terrain and how the conditions may affect it and affect the hazard that I'm anticipating on my journey? Well, guidebooks are a really good place to start. As you can see 3 here, there's many available from different publishers for different areas of Scotland. But I can get in there and I can find out a little bit about, ledge route, for example, in this example of, well, what's the route like? What are the challenges around completing it? what are good conditions to try it out in, what would be some dangerous conditions. So for example, descending ledge route, you commonly would cross number 5 gully there and go to Moonlight Buttress and down that way, but it does involve crossing number 5 gully, which will be highlighted in the guidebook, and the big hazard around there, which is the sort of enormous avalanche potential that can come out of the big bowl at the top there. And that can really help inform your plan as to whether it's a good day for it or whether actually it's better left to another day. So it may be you've read the guidebook and you've seen the hazard at number 5 gully, and at least you want an alternative for on the day if you don't fancy it. So you come up with another idea of descending number 4 gully, as shown by this red line here. Now, again, the guidebook will help, and you can quickly identify that actually you're going to need the skills to descend over a cornice and be able to move safely on steep snow to descend number 4 gully. And it's not just you, it's your group as well. So in the planning phase, making an honest assessment of people's experience and skill in that kind of terrain. So you made a really good assessment of number 4 gully, and you recognise that on your planned journey day, that the snow is going to be really hard. It's been through several melt-freeze cycles and it's hard neving, and the consequences of a slip are really high. You know your group are good and that actually they're going to cope with that terrain, but maybe they might not be on their best day when you choose to go, so you want to have another option. So you explore some more options, and the easiest way off the Ben is down the zigzags or down the red burn, as marked by the green and blue red line on the map. So you kind of think, well, let's make an assessment of the hazard there. And probably the trickiest thing there is the navigation to get to the top of it. You want to be able to safely walk from the summit without walking over the edge of the north face. And you also need to be able to make an assessment of the potential avalanche risk in the red burn there. You can see from the fat map illustration that there's terrain in there that's steep enough to avalanche. So you're going to need to make a good choice around the snow conditions. So as we descend off the mountain, we move out of that really frozen zone into areas where the freezing levels are often fluctuating. You might find that there's more running water, and you can see that our line on the map crosses several streams on the way back to the North Face car park. And it's not a hazard that's worth ignoring. It's the hazard of crossing streams, especially when they're covered in snow. In wintertime, it's really serious, isn't it? If you fall through into a stream, you can get wet and hypothermic, you could break a leg or something as you drop in, or even worse, get trapped in a watercourse underneath the snow. So it's worth considering the conditions and how that's going to affect the hazard of snow bridges. Snow bridges are often weaker in thaw periods or immediately after fresh snow when holes may be covered up, but the snow is still soft and not supporting of your body weight as you walk over them. So now it's time for us to head out on our journey, using the information that we collected during the planning phase, which will set us off on the right track with a full understanding of the hazards and risks ahead of us. We're really well prepared. The broad theme of the journey phase is to monitor the weather, snowpack, us and our team, and the terrain as we pass through it. And the question we're asking ourselves constantly through the journey is what we're experiencing the same as what we expected from our plan, or have some factors shifted? Do we need to change our plan to mitigate for these differences? The journey phase starts as you leave the car, or even earlier as you start to be able to see the situation for how it is rather than what was predicted. Ask yourselves questions relating to the weather and the snowpack, you and your team, and the terrain that you can now see. Is it what you expected? How much snow cover is there compared to your plan, or are the runouts more bony than you thought? Is there more snow blowing around and creating wind slab or building cornices? What's the visibility like? Are your navigational skills up to the challenge? Looking at the two images here of the same view as you're walking in on different kinds of days, you can see very different levels of challenge, from a beautiful, clear blue sky day to a moody, potentially more awkward day on the hill. As you arrive on the summit ridge of Cairngorms National Park, what questions can you ask yourself relating to hazard? It could be around wind speed. Is the wind what what I predicted, or is it stronger? Is it more gusty? Is it affecting how I can safely move? Is it affecting cornice build-up? Visibility, can I avoid falling through the cornices? And do my navigational skills allow me to travel safely along the ridge and avoid that hazard? As we approach the exposed Cairngorms arête, it may be worth focusing in on the day's environment. What are the challenges that present themselves today, now? Do we have lots of deep, soft snow that drain our energy reserves faster? Will it be more forgiving if we stumble and slip because of that? Or do we have a bony situation with hard surfaces and nasty runouts? Movement might be really efficient, but very unforgiving if we make a mistake. What are our team's strengths and weaknesses today? Which situation favours us or places us under stress, and are we able to cope with that? So we're approaching the summit of Ben Nevis. How's everyone doing? Are folk coping with the conditions? Where is your essential focus, or the team's essential focus? Is it narrowed solely on navigation, or is it on thoughts of the pub? Is it on your tired legs, or the big picture of the situation? It's maybe your most exposed part of the day when you're most susceptible to things like cold injuries. People clothed appropriately for the conditions? Are zips undone? Have they got a buff over their face? Maybe have heightened caution in periods of extreme cold or wind chill, or if people have been ill recently and are still recovering, when they're more prone to these cold injuries. Regularly monitor your team for signs and symptoms, and then you can get ahead of the game. Key places should be set during the planning stage. They are must-make events, and we can use them to consider far more than slope stability. All hazards need to be considered. We've got 3 key places here that we've maybe chosen to identify at the planning stage, and as we pass them on our journey, we're stopping, we're making a decision together. As we arrive on the summit ridge of Cairngorms, it's that decision of, is it appropriate to continue, or do we just head back down now? Before we enter the exposed arête, what are the conditions like ahead of us? How is everyone feeling? Is it a decision that everyone wants to make to carry on, or do we need an alternative? And on the summit, what of those 3 options that we plan for is the appropriate one for the day, for the condition that people are in once they're on the summit, psychologically and physically, for the weather and the terrain around us as well. Which of those 3 options are we being steered towards? It's so important to stop and actually physically have the discussion and not assume anything within our team. Many accidents occur as you enter easier terrain towards the end of the day. Particularly if the bulk of the day has been pretty near your max in terms of your physical or psychological ability. There's that moment where you come out of that stressful situation and your body and brain can slump. I'm safe. When actually you're not. There's still a significant level of challenge ahead. You don't perceive it to be as tough as what you've had throughout the day. So it's so important in those moments that you're able to keep positive focuses on your movement and the overall situation around you. When you get off the hill, remember it's really important to review your day. Great questions to ask are what went well, what do we want to do more of next time we're in the hills, what would we do differently if we had a chance to do the day again, and maybe the trickiest question of all, what did we get away with? When were those moments when we rolled the dice and we were fine, but technically actually we were really out of control? So by putting the structure of the Be Avalanche Aware model into the more broad concept of risk, we're able to make reasoned and rational assessments of risks surrounding our friends' encouraging idea of a grand day out in the mountains, and rather by assuming many factors and relying on the fact that if they did it, we can do it, we've broken the day down into chunks, we've genuinely considered each aspect and managed them appropriately. This is a recipe for a long and healthy relationship with the mountains.